Good afternoon, or good morning, or good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. Thank you for joining. We are just going to wait another moment or two as people come into the room, and then we'll begin. If you wouldn't mind, as you come in, please share in the Q&A box where it is that you're coming from, and hopefully what the weather is. Hopefully it's nice and warm, because we're in chilly, cold Boston today. It's beautiful, the sun's out, but it's a little chilly. Par for the worst for the end of April in Boston.
University of Iowa. Nice. It's nice and sunny there. Welcome.
Still see people coming through, so we'll just wait another moment or two.
Excellent. New York City, another East Coaster, Teachers College, Columbia University. Lexington, Kentucky. It's sunny. Warm and 56 degrees in beautiful Hofstra University.
Oh, a very warm 56, huh? That's optimistic.
We got Mercyhurst University from Pennsylvania. Sunny but cold. I think we're all the East Coast. We're all in the sunny but cold bucket. Spring has finally come at the College of Western Idaho. Rapid City, South Dakota. Wow, we've really got lots of coverage on the map today. Arizona, 85 degrees. You win.
That sounds awfully nice. All right, I think we are, people are still trickling in, but we will kick it off. This is the power of digital community. Thank you all for joining our Ready Education webinar today. My name is John Hope, and I am the Vice President of Partnerships at Ready Education, and based here in Boston, as I mentioned. And I'm joined by my colleague, Kristen Brenna, who is actually also on the partnerships team with us. Kristen is a solutions architect on the Ready Education team. And just to kick off, we have some housekeeping. We will be recording this session, and we'll send out after the webinar, we'll send a link to the recording, and we'll also send you the slides if you're interested. And throughout the discussion here today, please go right ahead and type in any questions that you might have into the Q&A box, and we'll be very happy to address those as we move through the presentation. So in order to just kick us off, let's start with a quick poll. And the statement that we'd like you to either agree, disagree, or remain neutral on is that students at my institution feel like they are part of a larger community. Just make one choice, and we'll see how those tally up. There's certainly been an awful lot written over the last many, many years about building community on campus, the importance of a sense of belonging from many, many different respects. And let's see what our results are. Okay, interesting. It looks like 36% agree, which is great, that students at their institution feel like they're a part of a larger community, with 14% of our attendees disagreeing, and then just 50% are neutral. So interesting results. And let's dive into the conversation. So today, just an overview of what we'll be discussing is we'll be talking about a sense of belonging and why a sense of belonging is important and why it has a direct impact on student persistence and student completion. We'll talk about how building an online community can support your students both on campus and off and in a hybrid situation, and the importance of using data to support your strategies. We know we want to measure and constantly measure and improve. So why should we do that? And what are the types of measurements that we can make? And we'll also hear from our special guest today about the ways that Post University uses their mobile app to grow their online community and to engage students.
Excellent. So the other thing I just want to share is, why we're focusing specifically on sense of belonging. And one of the key reasons is that this factors into not just our current students, it's a big factor in retention. If a student feels like a supported member of the campus community, they're more likely to persist. But it also factors in for our prospective students. We know from studies that having a sense of belonging was one of the key reasons that students used for choosing one university over another. We also know that when students join a private institution or make a decision about a college, it's typically a very intentional decision. They're not just looking for academic excellence, but they're also looking for that sense of community. They want to be part of the community, part of the group. And sometimes when they pick a small university, they're looking for that close-knit campus community. In our studies, that we're citing here about sense of belonging, we also know there's some specific challenges for certain population groups, first-gen students, first-year students, minority students, often have trouble making that leap and getting that sense of belonging. So we're going to talk specifically about that, how we can sort of invite those students in and help them feel like a welcome and supported member of that campus community.
That's right. We do know that a sense of belonging can be a slightly intangible topic. It's a little squishy and hard to identify. It somewhat follows Maslow's hierarchy of needs, basic physiological and safety needs, as well as many other elements. But the one thing that I think we do all know is that it takes a sustained effort and sustained collaboration across campus in order to drive a program that actually can help elevate and help increase the sense of belonging that students have on campus. And as we mentioned at the outset here, measuring these things is obviously very important. So what are the things that students do if they feel safe, if they feel as though they belong and they have that sense of belonging? Well, they're likely to meet their deadlines. They're likely to take advantage of student support services. They'll meet with their advisor. They're going to engage across campus. They'll attend events. They'll be able to make friends. They'll enroll for their courses on time and build meaningful connections across campus, including with their faculty. Another critical thing that we can measure is that students feel comfortable and feel empowered to raise their hand, seek help, ask for help when they need it. And another area that we can track and measure is participation in engagement on campus, particularly around clubs and organizations and how that thrives. So before we go any further, I really would like to introduce Jeffrey Olson, who is our guest today. We're thrilled to have Jeff with us. Jeff is the Vice President of Student Experience and the Dean of Students for Post University. Jeff's been with Post for 12 years, and throughout his career at Post, he's worked in admissions, advising, as a faculty member, and worked strategically and operationally at nearly every department at Post University. Jeff has a very strong passion for higher education, and particularly the ability that it has to empower people to grow and achieve more for themselves than perhaps they thought they were capable of. And that's a great mission to have. Jeff also feels that in the post-pandemic, still very much a hybrid world, people are seeking connection with each other and with things more important than themselves, perhaps more so than ever before coming off the pandemic. I couldn't agree more with that. And just a little bit about Post University, for those who don't know. Post was founded in 1890, and their mission has always been to deliver an exceptional educational experience that provides an extraordinary level of student support. Today, their students are both online in a hybrid environment, as well as on their beautiful campus, which is located in Waterbury, Connecticut. And Post keeps growing. In fact, a couple of years ago, they just added a nursing and health sciences school that they had acquired. So ever broadening set of programs and expanding their offerings to lifelong learners.
Excellent. So I think we're going to start out, Jeff, if you could share with us, how does Post University has a very interesting population. It's mostly online. You do have some ground students. How do you encourage that sense of belonging for the students that are online, as well as those more traditional ground students who are on campus, and I think in Waterbury, right?
Correct. It's a very good question. And as we know, belonging is very nebulous. It changes over time. It's different for every person. It's different for that same person, month 1 to month 3. The strategy that we've embarked on, and really it's never going to be fixed, never be done, is you have to build the architecture, then you create ample offerings, and then you reinforce through the people involved. And what I mean by that is we've built places and opportunities for students of all types to find connections with one another based on shared interests. Sometimes that is a demographic. I'm an online student, you're an online student. Okay, we're in an online student feed. Sometimes that's a club or an organization that you're passionate about. Oh, we're both part of the Avis Gaming Association because we like to play online games. And now you've found something that allows you to connect to another human. And we've done that in the digital world exceptionally well through the mobile app by creating a very obvious architecture and menu, if you will, of places to go and find people that you believe you'll relate to. But another piece to that, especially when it comes to official organizations or clubs, is I like to use the word altitude. Going into a club traditionally in college has been, I need to go and join a club. And then once I've joined, I get all the privileges of that club. Well, in an online population, it's a very different world because you've got 30 somethings, 40 somethings, full-time jobs, kids, and they're like, yeah, I want to be involved in that, but I have about 10 minutes a month to dedicate to that. So I'm not going to go and do this thing that's intimidating called joining, which feels like a commitment. So we opened up our app and our clubs and our opportunities to say, just show up, just jump into that thread, just jump into that conversation channel and find out what that's about. Come to the meeting. Here's the link. Just get in. And then when it comes to establishing leadership and president, vice president roles, those will have some parameters to them. Somebody 5 minutes a month is not going to be the president of that club. But that altitude with which they can engage, and this was something that took a little time because that person who says, I'm part of this club that might only go once every 2 months, still goes home and identifies themselves as being part of that club. And that's belonging. And that's finding connections that they're like, yes, all right, I'm there. It's not on my judgment, it's on their judgment. So we create the architecture, we create the places, we allow for that altitude, that accessibility at varying levels. I do want to add a caveat to that. With the online student and the main campus student, we once went down the experiment of having all the clubs be the same, and that failed. And we're not afraid to fail because our online students at 40 something had life experience that absolutely dominated the campus students. And so in the discussion conversations, the campus students couldn't care less about the kids or picking them up from school. They want to talk about something else. And in the leadership roles, the campus students felt really intimidated trying to be the leader of this club with a bunch of people their parents' age. So we did find there are separate, and then there are joint activities and events and things that take place. So that was leading me to the architecture, the altitude, and the types of places to find belonging. Whether that, like I said earlier, was about demographic, whether that's belonging to your school, to your residence hall, to your club, to your sport, to your social preferences, such as I like to follow TikTok, you like to follow Facebook, and you like to be on Instagram. Those all have distinctions that we find our students really gravitating towards based on their particular type. I could monologue all day and I want to stop because I think you guys want to continue moving on, but questions, and we can always circle back to this at any time.
Yeah. No, I just want to, before the webinar today, Jeff and I were chatting about the post-university app and just the diversity of what we call channels in that app. And as Jeff mentioned, we've got groups for LGBTQ, for nursing majors, for student government, for everything. So it's academic, it's co-curricular, and sometimes it's just special interest. There's a channel in here for folks who are looking at weight loss surgery, right? So it's and just for our audience, so they sort of understand what we're talking about, the post-university app is the main app for all students at post-university. And there is this online community inside of it. And these students, this is not the Wild West of social media. These students are authenticated in. So when they join that group, they're talking to other post-university students. They're not talking to the internet at large. This is a virtual community exclusively for post. So I just wanted to clarify that if we have folks joining us who are unfamiliar with the Ready Education platform or the Post app. Excellent. So this is where we're going to talk about some of those student challenges. So we talked about how we have some certain populations that are difficult to engage. Those first gen students don't come to campus, whether it's online or in person, with an innate instinct to ask for help. So how do we sort of invite them to student services, help them connect with one another? And that's really how we're doing it. These are some of the challenges that many of our partners have encountered. Often we get a question at Ready Education about, what about online students? Are online students going to use a platform like this? We often point to Post as the evidence that they certainly will. Post University has over 90% adoption on their post-university app. If you are a student at Post, you download that app, you go into that community, you can see how vibrant it is. There are many messages that were just left in the last hour. So this is how active it is. But that's really one of the things you're going to see content-wise are these students are asking sometimes like very basic customer service questions. Sometimes they're asking opinions about different programs of study, different courses, how to buy and sell a textbook. So truly this is the one-stop shop for Post. So what the Post University app is doing, it's sort of meeting the moment of a huge communication gap that many colleges and universities are trying to overcome right now. And that's the fact that email is simply not effective. We know students spend about 5 hours a day, give or take, on their smartphones. But so they have the bandwidth to read your messages. You're just not communicating with them in the modality that's effective for them. So we've got all of these important messages sort of funneled through this email channel, but it's not getting the reaction. We know about 54% of emails go unread. 39% of emails from advisors get ignored. These are sometimes high stakes messages. They sometimes impact the student's ability to persist. So what Post and many of our partners have done is they've created this online community, this one-stop shop that actually lives on the student's smartphone. So what we're doing is we're sort of earning some of that 5 hours that they're spending on that smartphone, and we're redirecting it to Post. We're redirecting it to university business. We're helping them connect with student services and with each other.
Absolutely. And, you know, one of the things, Jeff, that I hear as I speak to leaders at institutions around the globe is the topic of the resource access by their students, utilization of resources. And in many cases, depending on the size of the school, institutions are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, on things like tutoring center, the writing center, the career center, on and on and on, counseling centers. And when I ask them about utilization of resources, I always get, you know, a shake of the head or a nod of the head, an affirmation that it's a problem. And they use a lot of the communication techniques that were just on the last slide. They email their students, they put up signs, posts around campus. but they still suffer from utilization. So in your experience at Post, how are you leveraging your mobile app in order to keep students better informed about the resources that they have available to them?
Well, I think, Kristen, you touched on that when you were articulating a little bit about what's in the thread. There's a lot of things we do to inform on resources. The number one tragedy is when you have the resource that will help a student and they don't even know that it's there, that they could have been helped.
Right.
But what we have found, and you touched on it, John, about communication, is that communication is in a world of flux right now that is really caustic to a lot of people. So finding out how to actually get that message to that student is a struggle for everyone. People aren't reading emails. You said that, Kristen. People aren't responding to texts. And so we're finding a lot of students are getting informed on the resources from other students who are using the resources because they trust that communication thread. We're seeing a lot of it happen in the student feed saying, I need help with this, and other students prescribing those resources right within there. Now we have student government, we have moderators that will go in and insert some of those resources at times. We don't hyper respond to a student feed, but we do pay attention. And if something is getting out of hand or very crisis management, for example, if somebody really threatens self-harm, somebody's on that and responds and allocates resources. But in some of the more benign asks for help, calls for help, oh, I'm really struggling here. This class is so confusing. You'll see, I took that class last semester, I can help you. Have you reached out to the tutoring center? Because they're fantastic. And talk to the tutor named Susan, she's great. And you start to see students prescribing to other students a lot of those resources that were built. Now, the mobile app itself is full of all the resources. It works as a directory. It has tiles. It has direct links. You can get to any one of those pieces. But we find students like the conversation thread. They really enjoy that. And so by getting that student-based student government to keep monitoring and infusing conversations into the app, and students who've already used the resource being that validity to the next student to use resource, that's so much more powerful than an advisor calling me and saying, hey, I saw you got an F on your last paper. I think you should go see the tutoring center, because that's a shock to the system. And thanks for reminding me. Now I feel even worse. But a student who has gotten the guts and the safety, the psychological safety to reach out in that platform and say, I'm putting myself out here. This is our academic world. This isn't Facebook. This is Post. Somebody help me, and then seeing it help, it's just like, it warms your heart. It's fantastic. One other thing I will say, I think is a really important feature that we put into the mobile app that we're also continuing to cultivate is when you go into the mobile app and you go into the conversation channels, we have 5 different experiences of the mobile app based on demographic, student, faculty, staff, online student, but all of them use the same conversation channels. The default channel is Post News, and we created that so that everyone who goes in there to use the social platform gets the Post News almost like a billboard would be in your quad. And they see, oh, our portal's going to be down for maintenance. Oh, there's a new event tonight. Or, oh, you should understand, here's the weekly newsletter. And so when we want to highlight things, it's finals time. Here's our health and wellness resources you might want to pay attention to. It kind of works as a central repository, training students to go there if they're looking for general information. It will be posted there if it's important.
And I think that kind of goes to our next topic of, sort of what your digital solution should have, because post-university is certainly not inviting students to a community, right? They're inviting them to use the mobile app for the university. It's sort of, congratulations, you've been accepted to Post, download the mobile app for Post, and you authenticate into it. So this is a true enterprise solution. It doesn't live in one department. We have folks across marketing, IT, student affairs, student services, academic affairs, who are contributing content, information, and communicating with students in the app. So the nice kind of side effect of that is this online community, which is the sense of belonging that we're talking about today, but it sits in this enterprise platform. So at Post, I can check my grades, pay my bill, I can register for class all through the app. And hey, while I'm there, I can also go check out what's happening in the nursing channel. So it's sort of important to understand that the success at Post is really driven by that high adoption, and that high adoption is driven by it being a true digital student experience for all students, not just our most engaged students who want to ask questions and meet other students. It's actually for everyone. So we're casting our net across the entire community, not just our most engaged students. I think that's really the difference between this solution and some other solutions that folks have tried to try to create online virtual communities. This sits in the enterprise Post student experience. The other nice thing about it is it does track with the student that single mobile app. They can download that when they're a prospective student, use it when they're an enrolled student. They can continue as an alum. So it's the same technology. It's the same platform that we've acclimated them on, taught them to use. We can still keep in contact with those people with that same platform.
So there are a couple questions, and one question is from Kate, and it seems like I'll summarize that. I've looked at times to get groups of students to get together who are identified as Latino, Latina, Latinx together and trying to do so, and they've struggled with being able to do it in person, even post-pandemic. And it seems like, according to Kate, that people are also sort of kind of have Zoom fatigue and are fatigued by that. But I'm curious to ask you, Jeff and Kristen, if there are any strategies that you find are working in order to make students more comfortable or help students become more comfortable with gathering together on campus and participating.
If I could respond, it's hard, and don't give up. We have found that the author of the event, meaning who is creating the event, is it an administration event? Is it from I forgot the name of the group. Is it from a specific group? Is it from a specific school? The closer to the student itself that you can create the event, the more students will come. Despite thinking if it was a big event put on by administration, you're reaching the largest net. Large nets don't work, in my opinion. You need to have, the Black Student Union is creating an event, and you will get all those people who are actively engaged and involved in that, and their next layer out. That event will be bigger than if administration has an event of the same nature. And so that is one thing. And the second thing is repeat it, make it memorialize and happen again. It starts to build. The first step into meeting or going back in person or getting together, that is hard. And you get your early adopters, but you don't get the large group. But when you tell the story of that, it already happened, and here's what we talked about, and here's what we're doing next, that next one or that third one tends to be the real successful ones. Those are my two pieces of advice.
No, that makes good sense. So repetition is key. Don't stop after one or two. That makes good sense. Another question for both of you from Kate is, how do you get students to download the app? How do you get them to open the app once it's downloaded? How do you get them to engage with the app?
Well, our number one and number two reasons for using the app are going to their student portal, check their account, and going to the LMS, Blackboard. And we're okay with that. We manage that. We treat the mobile app like a very busy intersection in the center of town. If you get people to drive through that intersection every single day for whatever reason they're doing, then when you put other stuff up, they'll notice it. And so we want them to go in the mobile app and go to their portal. We want them to go in the mobile app and go to their LMS. And by the way, when you're here, you start to see these other things that are of interest. So while we have those two main keystones, we publish events in the mobile app. We put reminders for events in the mobile app. We get access to those events through the mobile app. The post newsletter gets published through the mobile app. So we start to train them to go in there for other things of interest, and that will get them to the expansive ecosystem that's within.
Yeah, and I think that starts, you know, as an enterprise. It has to be an enterprise solution. They can't just go there just to get student affairs content. It's got to be everything. They can check their grades, as Jeff said. They can connect to the portal, pay their bills, register for class. It's got to be the one-stop shop.
I have one more point on that.
Yeah, please.
We also did put it in orientation, and every student in orientation downloads it, and every student in our online orientation, we can't confirm they downloaded it, but they're suggested to, and here's why. We explain why it will be a benefit, and then we have to keep putting good content in there to make you go back to it again. It will, and we're not trying to compete with Instagram. We're not trying to compete with social media companies. We're trying to make it its own identity that makes sense to our students.
Yeah.
So along the lines of ownership, there's a question here about who owns this on campus? Any thoughts from either of you on that?
That's a great question. It kind of falls on me as the dean and the VP of student experience. Not that I do all the work to it, but the vision of what that app does. How do I feel after using this mobile app is the substance of my job. And so when I look at the UX of it, when I look at the offerings of it, when I look at can our students do what they are asking to do in that mobile app, that falls on me. And then you have other entities that are involved in it. You have an IT support, you have moderator support, you have groups and clubs who are infused into it doing it, you have campus life doing stuff. But it has to fall from a singular visionary, not that I'm a visionary, but you know what I mean? From a singular source that's really projecting out why are we using this mobile app, or it will become a Frankenstein of a whole bunch of different people asking for different things out of it.
Yeah, and I think that's accurate. The other thing I want to say, just to speak to this slide that we have on the screen here, is once you've achieved that high adoption, once we've achieved that active community, your students are talking to you. And when we talk about app governance, who owns it, there's a lot of data coming through that a lot of your different departments are going to be interested in. It could be assessment data. It could be surveys about why students haven't paid their deposit yet for the fall semester. We want to understand what kind of intervention to reach back out to them with. So there's a very robust communication system in this app. So anybody on campus who has some interest in getting data, collecting data, looking at student sentiment, looking at certain keywords that might be used in the community. This might be your student services folks looking for students who need additional support in financial aid, academics, mental health, what have you, all of the things that we stood up for them. This is where it's a good thing to sort of socialize this across campus. When we think about who owns it, it's typically an app governance team that includes folks from student affairs, student services, marketing. Those are the big areas, and certainly enrollment management, because we also want to provide an experience for our prospective students in the app. So it differs from campus to campus, but what we're suggesting is not this is a new job for someone. This is a new communication tool in your toolkit that lots of folks at your campus can benefit from. So that's sort of my take on. What do you think about that, Jeff?
No, I think you're right. And there's a lot that is gleaned from departments. I have a couple examples that I was going to use in our next slide. But, you know, when we first rolled out the app, we rolled it out for students only. And so staff and faculty couldn't even get into it because of how our system worked. That was a mistake. It took a little while, and we finally got staff and faculty in the mobile app so that, to your point, it is an entire enterprise system. Now, staff and faculty don't use it the same way, but they have a lens into what's going on with students. And with stuff like sentiment analysis or keyword analysis, we've got our financial aid department, for example. They get notified when people use keywords like refund, stipend, FAFSA, stuff like that. And they are immediately going to the context of that thread to say, does this person need help? Because it is a constant state of confusion for an online student. And what it has done is it's not only given us reactive procedures to help these students, but we have then used it to say, okay, every term we have this many comments about where is my stipend. We're not explaining it on the front end well enough. And so they're asking these questions. So we've started to change the way we explain financial aid to students so that the questions don't occur. And so it becomes that listening post, that lens to which you can say, how are we operating and what are our students really understanding from that statement that we're making? So it's been a great way to use that data that, I mean, there's very, very empirical data that we use all the time out of it, but there's subjective data that comes out of there in tenfold. And that if you just take a little bit of time to read through and understand what's happening, you're getting the sentiment of that student, whether it's electronically or just personally going through it. And we get a lot of value from that. And that's part of why we adopted the whole campus to have access. They don't use it to the same level as a student does. There isn't a staff or faculty conversation thread going on. Maybe we should create one. We haven't. We have student ones. But we are getting a lot of information and intel from it, as well as being comfortable enough to say, oh, Kristen, you want to use the mobile app? I'll teach you how to do it because I know how to do it myself, instead of talking about this mystery thing out there.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Just one additional question before we move on. Tessa and a few others have asked about downloading the app. There is a public version of the Post app, I believe, that you could download from the App Store. I don't think you won't get an authenticated experience without a post.edu email. But if people are interested in downloading an example of what a mobile app would look like, you please just type it into the Q&A and we'd be happy to direct you to a resource where you can download one. Okay, time for our second poll today. And that question is appearing on the screen now. If you would like to learn more about any of the topics that you see listed below, please indicate such. And secondly, if you'd like to learn more about Ready Education, please indicate that as well, and we'd be happy to connect you with somebody who can answer your questions. And I think we'll move on to the Q&A, and let's see if we have some questions here in the chat.
Yes, I have one.
Go ahead.
Oh, there's our poll. I was just going to ask Jeff, what do you do? I mean, these are college students at the end of the day. What do you do when you have a bad actor, someone who writes something in the online community that post university does not feel great about or does not sanction?
Oh, well, that is a lot of fun. So we have a civility code that completely contains our social media, including this mobile app, community standards and guidelines. And unfortunately, I have had to dismiss students for their conduct, whether that be in a public forum or whether that be through direct messages that were then reported up to me. But most of the time, the bad actor, if you will, is experiencing some sense of frustration or anger or irritation that doesn't always come out the way we would as professionals. And so I've spent a lot of time with the various people who moderate and review the app to know when to really understand that something is venting versus threatening, and understanding that distinction. It is a student channel. So I've had plenty of students be critical of post-university, be critical of their world, say, I'm so angry, using expletives here and there. And if they're inward focused, they're just blowing off steam, and that's okay. It is a public forum. I don't want them to use the language they use. We will coach that. We will counsel that. We will delete that post, but I'm not going to kick them off the app for being angry. When they are threatening or directing it outwardly, we absolutely have a problem and we need to go through that. And sometimes we can remediate and sometimes we can't. But I have a young lady who posts all the time on the mobile app, and I've had to mute her twice on the app because of her language and coach her through it. And in that coaching, I recognize that she's coming from a very different structural background than I am in understanding what decent discourse is in a public forum. And so it's been a learning experience, whereas it could have been really easy to just cut ties. She's one of our most active members in there, and she's been supportive and contributory to many people. And she gives us great feedback of where we are still missing, because we're not perfect. And so that piece, understanding that they do have a civility code that they need to recognize and understand and are accountable to, but then teaching those people who are reviewing to understand, or at least ask for help, the distinctions between I'm walking through the quad and I'm angry and I'm going to share that with my person next to me. That's what this channel is. But because it's written, it lasts forever. But while you're walking, no one thinks anything of it.
Right. Well, the only thing I'd add to that, Jeff, is I think like what you're doing for that young woman is you're providing some level of intervention, right? Like that's a benefit to this app. This is not the Wild West of social media. She could be on a Facebook page talking into the wind and nobody at post would hear it. This provides you a mechanism to be responsive to those comments at scale. So really help that student understand that the point of frustration. The other opportunity here is this isn't there's no anonymity, right? So these folks log in, they authenticate in, they are subject to the code of conduct. And we do have many of our campuses sort of help the moderation of the community by sort of deputizing student ambassadors to go in there and sort of lead the conversation, promote their events, promote their clubs, answer customer service questions. We also have other features that help you manage the community, things like those keyword alerts. So using a keyword that has to do with FAFSA. We want somebody in the financial aid office to be responsive to that comment. So yeah, I think it's an interesting way, and Post is really using this app in a very interesting way because of just, I mean, you can see just by looking at the community, it's absolutely very active with lots of people that have lots of opinions, most of them positive. So,
well, and I'm a fan of negative opinions in a controlled environment, because if someone is upset, they're going to let you know. But
yep.
Where they let you know is up to them. So if you give them a place, they'll use that. If you don't give them a place, it's probably going to be in something much more public. And
Yep.
in this place, it gives you a chance to respond, gives you a chance to have. I've had plenty of students go to bat for, somebody says, oh, my advisor's the worst, they never get back to me. And you've got 35 comments below say, well, hold on a second, you must be wrong, because my advisor's fantastic. Here's what they do. Here's what they do. Here's what they do. And it's like, call this person, they'll get it solved. And it's like, wow, these students just intervened. That's,
yep.
Again, tying it all the way back. They belong, they have pride in where they are. And it's a powerful tool when you can cultivate.
So thank you both for that. Just the results on our poll for our audience today in terms of their interest level, and not surprising really, although the ranking is always interesting to see how groups of people rank these. The number one response was improving student engagement at 62%, which I think is on everybody's mind these days, especially as we are now post-pandemic. Second area that gained the second most responses was drivers of retention. Retention always critical on everybody's mind. And thirdly, of course, another hot topic for today is supporting students' mental health and well-being across campus. So all of those are really critical. And I guess there is one other question here, which I'll summarize this one as well. It relates to IT resources and IT queues and backlogs. And how much time does it take your IT staff to support this app, Jeff?
After construction, it's not a lot of time. Once you've built it and then built mechanisms for reviewing any static data that's in there, things change, departments change, people change. But from the IT administration, we have built it through our Active Directory for everyone who logs in to be authenticated and go. So there's zero work on providing it to a new student, because that student needs to download it. Once they do and they log in, we're all good. That's been constructed. We pull onto IT when we want to make changes through our steering committee. We wanted to put a Teams tile in there because we use Teams. So we want to make sure that that tile, when you click it, opens your app to Teams. And that took a little bit of work, but it's project based. Here's what we need. They go in and do it, and they come back from it. So from the development and start, that's a little bit of a heavy lift, but once it's in place, it manages pretty simply.
Yeah, so there is a lot to leverage when you're incorporating the SSO to just trigger through those pass-throughs, where a mobile app truly can become that one-stop shop for all of the resources. It's not just what's included in the app itself, in the native app. Great.
Yeah, we wanted every student to have complete access to our technology ecosystem through their mobile device. And this is the platform that we use to be that entry point. Yes, you can download the Blackboard app and go directly there, but we put the link to it right here in the mobile app, in the post one. So they come here, they click that, and it opens their Blackboard app, just central repository piece.
Excellent. Excellent. So I don't see any further questions in our queue. So I would like to first thank you, Jeff, for joining us today. Really appreciative of your time. Kristen, thank you as well for joining us. And thank all of you, our guests and visitors. And if you do have any more requests for information, we'd be very happy to respond to you. And keep your eyes open for an email with the link to this recording and the slides. And we thank you very much for your time today, and have a wonderful rest of your day and rest of your week. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.